They told you Venus was just a symbol of beauty, the gentle goddess of love shining like the brightest star in the sky. But what if that was the greatest lie ever told? What if behind the glow of the morning star occult brilliance hides the most forbidden goddess worship, a dark goddess cult that elites have secretly preserved for thousands of years? The forbidden Venus knowledge was erased from temples, hidden in texts, and buried in myths, yet it survived, disguised as light while feeding on shadows. Here's the paradox. While the masses adored her as a goddess of desire and fertility, the elites worshipped Venus for reasons far more sinister. They knew her duality. Her smile hides blood, her beauty cloaks sacrifice. This isn't just mythology. It's Venus occult history, woven into secret societies, Venus that shaped empires, wars, and even modern culture. And the deeper you dig, the more you find Venus esoteric secrets staring back at you from symbols you see every day. So let's pull back the veil. In this journey, you'll see why the morning star occult is not only a symbol of rebellion, but also a Venus Gnostic trap, designed to bind humanity through desire and illusion. You'll discover how elites' occult rituals turned her into both muse and warden, how forbidden goddess worship shaped civilizations, and why the dark goddess cult still whispers behind locked doors. By the end, you may never look at a simple star, a rose, or a pentagram the same way again. What if the brightest star above us, the one poets called a symbol of beauty, was never truly about beauty at all? Imagine that Venus, instead of being the gentle goddess of love, was the mask of a much darker force, the dark goddess cult that elites whisper about behind closed doors. Throughout history, this planet has carried layers of forbidden Venus knowledge, blending fascination with fear. The Venus occult meaning was never just a matter of astronomy. It was a warning carved into myths, temples, and even blood sacrifice rituals. People often overlook how easily beauty becomes deception, how light hides shadow, and that's where the mystery deepens. Venus, as both a beacon of love and a forbidden goddess worshipped in secrecy, far from the common eye. Every culture that lifted its eyes to the heavens saw in Venus more than a star. The elites worshipped Venus because they believed her glow concealed secrets too dangerous for ordinary people. Some called her Ishtar, others Astarte, still others connected her to Lucifer-Venus connection, the fallen morning star. But no matter the name, the story carried the same undertone. Beauty was only half the truth. The other half was hidden in Venus occult history, in rituals whispered around fire, where forbidden goddess worship promised knowledge at the price of innocence. This duality of light and dark was not just myth, it was initiation. Consider how even today, people are drawn to symbols without knowing their origin. The five-pointed star that adorns flags, logos, and even military badges is not random. It echoes the Venus pentagram cycle, a pattern of Venus star geometry repeated with cosmic precision. Hidden in plain sight, this symbol is one of the Venus esoteric secrets passed from priesthoods to secret societies Venus kept alive. It's unsettling to realize that what feels familiar may actually be occult Venus symbolism, rooted in blood sacrifice and ancient power games. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This makes one wonder, why would elites' occult rituals revolve around a planet? Because Venus, in her duality, was never only celestial. She was the Venus black goddess, a force of fertility and destruction, weaving threads of desire and death. The forbidden Venus knowledge she carried wasn't academic. It was experiential. Those who engaged with Venus initiation secrets claimed visions, ecstasies, or nightmares. They discovered the thin line between ecstasy and obsession, between love and bondage. And in those experiences, they touched the forbidden side of what elites worshipped in silence. Imagine walking through an ancient temple, frescoes cracked by time, and seeing Venus painted not as a goddess of roses, but with blood dripping from her hands. That image tells a different story, the occult Venus rituals where offerings were not flowers, but life itself. Venus blood sacrifice was the currency of devotion, binding the worshipper to the goddess's darker currents. It sounds distant, but think about modern equivalents. How desire, obsession, and lust drain people of energy, leaving them enslaved to impulses they no longer control. That's Venus astral cult in action, subtle, invisible, but real. And here's the paradox. While Venus promised love, She also embodied the Venus Gnostic trap, a cycle of fascination that led straight into dependency. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's visible in society today. From the manipulation of desire in advertising to the obsessive glamour culture, Venus' hidden symbolism still rules silently. The elites understood this and used it. Secret societies, Venus integrated her imagery into initiation rituals, embedding Venus' dark side as both a warning and a weapon. If beauty blinds, then Venus is the master of blindfolds. The more you trace her story, the clearer the pattern becomes. Venus goddess duality has always been about control. Light to seduce, shadow to bind. Her starry brilliance is the front door, her underworld essence the trapdoor. It's a forbidden puzzle, one that connects mythology, astronomy, and psychology into a single riddle. And this riddle does not stop here. It unfolds in the ancient civilizations that first dared to give her a name, weaving her story across empires and faiths. When you look back at the first civilizations, it becomes clear that Venus was never just a twinkling light in the sky. In Babylon, she was Ishtar, the goddess who carried both love and war in her heart. In Sumer, she appeared as Inanna, capable of descending into the underworld and returning transformed, a myth echoing the forbidden goddess worship that elites kept alive. Egypt called her the morning star occult light, tying her to Hathor and sometimes Sekhmet, showing that beauty and destruction were always intertwined. Rome refined her image into Venus, but the blood of Mars was never too far from her altar. The forbidden Venus knowledge was not a story of tenderness. It was about the dangerous balance between creation and chaos. Think of Mesopotamia, where temples of Ishtar rose high and demanded not only flowers, but offerings of flesh. Inanna's cult celebrated Venus occult rituals, where fertility rites and blood sacrifice were seen as doors to the divine. These rites weren't just symbolic, they were power exchanges, a way to bind humans to the Venus astral cult that promised favor in love, wars, or harvest. The elites worshipped Venus precisely because she was not simple. She was a force that mirrored their hunger for dominance. Even then, secret societies Venus emerged, composed of priests, scribes, and kings, who knew that devotion to her meant aligning with both her blessings and her curses. Egypt tells a similar story, though dressed in golden sunlight. Here, Venus' hidden symbolism merged with the goddess Hathor, Lady of Joy, but also with Sekhmet, Lioness of War. This dual face showed again the Venus goddess duality, laughter and blood on the same lips. Pharaohs sought Venus initiation secrets to guarantee cosmic harmony, but harmony always required sacrifice. The morning star occult meaning was carved in rituals where musicians played to Hathor's delight, while soldiers drenched altars in red. Behind the beauty of lotus flowers was the scent of iron and the shadow of war. In Greece, the story shifted yet remained the same. Aphrodite, born from sea foam, seemed like pure grace, but myths revealed her darker side. She provoked wars. Think of Troy, where a single spark of desire burned empires. The elite's occult rituals echoed here too, for the Greeks linked her to Astarte and Ishtar, acknowledging her foreign, darker roots. To worship her was not only to celebrate love, but to risk the Venus Gnostic trap, the obsession that turns passion into destruction. Even Plato hinted that beauty was a dangerous ladder. It could raise the soul or chain it in illusion. That is the forbidden Venus knowledge hidden in plain sight. Rome sealed this legacy by elevating Venus as divine mother of their empire. Julius Caesar claimed descent from her through Aeneas, making her cult both political and cosmic. Yet under the marble temples, occult Venus worship never lost its sharp teeth. Festivals like Veneralia were decorated with flowers, but they masked deeper Venus occult history of blood and conquest. The elites worshipped Venus not only for beauty but for control, because she embodied desire, and desire ruled the masses. Here, Venus star worship became a state secret, an esoteric code for both empire and eternity. What fascinates is how each civilization painted Venus with different colors, but the brushstrokes always blended the same themes: fertility and war, passion and sacrifice. The forbidden goddess worship kept returning because humans sensed her duality mirrored their own. This explains why Venus in forbidden texts was never erased, only disguised. Whether she was called Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, Aphrodite, or Venus Black Goddess, the core remained unchanged, a deity of paradox, shaping history through both roses and blood. And in that paradox lies the Venus dark side that refuses to vanish. The trail doesn't end with temples and myths. If you follow her path, you begin to see how ancient astronomers traced her movements and encoded them into sacred geometry. The Venus pentagram cycle, precise and repetitive, hinted at something deeper. Knowledge elites believed was cosmic law itself. And this leads us directly to the next veil of the mystery, how the morning star became bound to the fallen angel, Lucifer, shaping not only myth, but the very foundations of forbidden Venus worship that survives in secret whispers today. What if the radiant star that rises before dawn was not a promise of hope, but a reminder of rebellion? Ancient watchers of the sky saw Venus blazing as the morning star and whispered of her connection to a fallen being, Lucifer. The Lucifer-Venus connection became a forbidden link, carrying the Venus occult meaning far beyond astronomy. To the common folk, it was just a star, but to those who practiced forbidden goddess worship, it was a sign of defiance, a spark of light cast out of divine order. The elites worship Venus because she embodied that paradox, brilliance that refuses to submit, beauty entwined with lawlessness. Biblical texts sharpened this symbol into an archetype of rebellion. Isaiah's lament of the morning star, son of the dawn, became the seed of Lucifer's myth, binding Venus to the fall of angels. Apocryphal writings expanded it, suggesting that the brightest light could also carry the deepest shadow. Here lies one of the most unsettling Venus esoteric secrets. The same planet tied to fertility rituals became a symbol of cosmic revolt. This was no coincidence. Secret societies. Venus studied these passages not to condemn them, but to embrace the Venus dark side as a path of initiation. Think of it this way. Every empire feared betrayal, yet every empire also secretly admired the rebel who challenged divine authority. The Lucifer-Venus connection captured this dual emotion perfectly. To the faithful, it was a warning. To the initiated, it was a map. Venus occult history shows elites bending biblical warnings into initiation secrets, framing the fallen angel not as a failure, but as a liberator of forbidden knowledge. In that sense, the Venus occult worship became a mirror of human desire to escape imposed chains, even at the cost of damnation. The association of Venus as morning star occult symbol also raised questions. How can the same star be herald of both day and night? This mystery fed the Venus Gnostic trap, the cycle of fascination and danger. In the dawn, she appeared as promise, in twilight as temptation. The forbidden Venus knowledge here was not just mythological, it was experiential. People could see it with their own eyes. The same star announcing beginnings and endings, order and chaos. No wonder the elite's occult rituals revolved around Venus star geometry, tying her rising and setting to calendars of power and sacrifice. Medieval mystics carried this forward, fusing astrology with theology. They warned that to invoke Venus was to risk invoking the fallen angel hidden within her. Yet in secret chambers, occult Venus rituals continued, masked as alchemy or angelic invocations. The morning star occult meaning became a code, light that frees or light that enslaves. This duality is why Venus hidden symbolism appears in both cathedrals and grimoires. On one hand, stained glass stars of Mary. On the other, pentagrams traced in forbidden texts. Both speak of the same entity, interpreted through different lenses. Examples of this survive even in modern times. Look at how desire, ambition, and rebellion are glorified in culture. Movies, music, even fashion idolize the archetype of the rebel star, the one who shines brightest while breaking rules. This echoes the forbidden goddess worship of Inanna or Ishtar, who descended into the underworld in defiance, and the Lucifer-Venus connection, where brilliance comes with a fall. What society calls iconic often mirrors the Venus astral cult in subtle ways, beauty, desire, rebellion, and sacrifice repeating through art and identity, and yet this thread of rebellion doesn't stop with myth or culture. If Venus could symbolize both love and defiance, fertility and destruction, then perhaps she was always meant to embody two faces. This leads us to the deeper enigma of the Venus goddess duality, the dark goddess who offers pleasure with one hand and demands blood with the other. a paradox that elites understood and encoded into their rituals, keeping her worship alive behind velvet curtains and iron doors. To speak of Venus is to speak of contradiction itself. She is the goddess who smiles with tenderness, yet demands blood to seal her truth. This Venus-goddess duality has haunted humanity for millennia, for she embodies the eternal paradox: desire and destruction, life and death, creation and decay. In the eyes of secret societies, Venus was never a harmless figure of love, but the Venus Black Goddess whose embrace was both healing and lethal. The forbidden Venus knowledge always warned that no blessing came without a price, and that behind her beauty hid the shadow of sacrifice. Imagine a figure offering you a rose with one hand, while the other hides a dagger dripping crimson. That is the Morning Star occult paradox. In rituals, this was more than poetry, it was practice. Elite's occult rituals included Venus blood sacrifice, not only to honor her, but to unlock Venus initiation secrets said to bestow forbidden knowledge. Those who entered the Venus astral cult knew they weren't dealing with gentle affection, but with a force that consumed and transformed. To embrace her was to walk a thin line between illumination and ruin. The ancients captured this truth in myths of descent. Inanna stripped of her garments in the underworld, Astarte demanding offerings of flesh, Aphrodite sparking wars. Each story revealed Venus' occult history as one of initiation through pain. To seek her favor meant surrendering comfort, innocence, or even sanity. This is why elites worship Venus, not for the illusion of beauty, but for the raw power hidden in her forbidden goddess worship. The very duality that terrified the masses was the same secret societies Venus sought to master. We see the same archetype mirrored in daily life today. How many chase desires thinking they'll find joy, only to become slaves of their own cravings? That's the Venus Gnostic trap playing out in modern form. Advertising, entertainment, even politics manipulate this duality. Beauty is offered, but beneath it lies addiction, obsession, and submission. Just as in ancient rites, the sacrifice remains, but now it's psychological energy, time, or freedom. In that sense, Venus occult meaning is as alive in consumer culture as it was in temples of blood. One personal analogy might help. Think of ambition. At first it shines like Venus rising, promising light and reward, yet unchecked, ambition turns into obsession, devouring peace and relationships. That's the Venus dark side. She teaches through extremes. The forbidden Venus knowledge warns that every gift she offers carries its shadow. The elites knew this, and so their occult Venus worship became less about love itself and more about mastering duality, using both faces of the goddess to bend others to their will. Even the sacred texts hint at this truth. Where one verse praises the morning star, another condemns it as fallen. Where one culture paints Venus as a mother, another as a destroyer. This Venus hidden symbolism was intentional, a reminder that she was never to be taken at face value. The duality of Venus Black Goddess reflects the duality in us all, the ability to create or destroy, to nurture or consume. And by worshipping her, elites mirrored their own thirst for absolute control, cloaked in beauty, yet forged in blood. But this duality wasn't only mythological, it was celestial. The Venus pentagram cycle itself reflects this paradox. A star pattern of perfect harmony formed through years of movement, yet tied to Venus occult rituals of sacrifice and power. It's almost as if the heavens themselves carved a warning into the sky. Symmetry concealing danger, beauty veiling blood, and so the story flows naturally into the codes of astronomy, where Venus star geometry became the ultimate symbol for those seeking to dominate both heaven and earth. When ancient astronomers looked to the sky, they realized Venus didn't just wander randomly. It moved with uncanny precision. Over 8 years, her journey across the heavens traced a perfect pentagram, the famous Venus pentagram cycle. To ordinary eyes, this might seem like coincidence, but to the elites worship Venus, it was a cosmic signature, proof of Venus' esoteric secrets etched in the very fabric of the cosmos. The Venus star geometry became more than science. It became scripture for forbidden goddess worship. A celestial text read by those who believed the dark goddess cult encoded her power in the stars themselves. Imagine watching the night sky and noticing that the brightest star reappears in exact harmony with your calendars of war, harvest, and ritual. This was no simple astronomy lesson. It was Venus occult, meaning unfolding in real time. Priests of Mesopotamia aligned temples with her risings, Egyptian scribes calculated her path with precision, and secret societies Venus later preserved these patterns in grimoires and star maps. To them, this was not about curiosity, but about control. Whoever mastered Venus occult history could align themselves with the rhythms of power, both earthly and divine. Even today, scientists marvel at this symmetry, but the hidden symbolism runs deeper. The Venus star worship wasn't just a poetic metaphor, it was a living code. The five-pointed star she draws was seen as sacred geometry, a divine seal that bound heaven and earth. Elites' occult rituals incorporated this symbol not only in architecture, but in entire cities. Pentagonal layouts, aligned monuments, even hidden maps carved into sacred sites. The forbidden Venus knowledge was passed down in stone and symbol. Camouflaged so well most people never realized they were walking through an occult Venus worship site. Consider Washington, D.C., with its pentagram streets hidden in plain sight, or the five-pointed stars found in military insignia worldwide. These are echoes of Venus occult rituals, carried across centuries. The elites worship Venus not by building altars anymore, but by embedding her geometry into the very structures of power. Every time the morning star rises in perfect alignment, those who know Venus initiation secrets see it as a cosmic nod, a reminder that their path is sanctioned by something older than any empire. This is not coincidence, it's deliberate continuity. Think of how this code could be applied personally. For instance, farmers once used the Venus pentagram cycle to time their crops, aligning with fertility and abundance. Today, seekers of hidden wisdom study the same cycles to align meditations, rituals, or even major life decisions. By observing Venus star geometry, one could sense the balance between order and chaos, attraction and repulsion. The forbidden Venus knowledge suggests that the same pattern guiding empires can also guide the individual, if they're brave enough to see beyond the veil. But there's also danger. The Venus Gnostic trap warns that symbols can enslave as much as they enlighten. To follow the star blindly is to become bound by her duality, just as civilizations once offered Venus blood sacrifice to maintain favor. Elites' occult rituals thrive on this paradox. The same geometry that promises harmony also conceals control. That is why Venus' hidden symbolism always carried a double edge, inviting awe yet demanding obedience. The dark goddess cult never offered gifts without chains. And here's where the thread tightens. These hidden codes of astronomy did not stay in temples or star charts. They became the backbone of secret societies Venus, groups who cloaked their devotion in mystery while embedding her geometry into their rituals. From medieval orders to modern elites, the cycle of Venus remained a silent script of power. And so, the story moves toward these brotherhoods of secrecy, who kept the forbidden goddess worship alive, passing her mysteries from generation to generation under the cover of stars and pentagrams. Behind the velvet curtains of history, certain groups always carried torches for Venus, not the gentle goddess of love, but the Venus black goddess hidden in secrecy. Templars, Rosicrucians, alchemists, and hermetic circles all whispered about Venus' occult meaning as the key to initiation. To outsiders, their symbols seemed harmless: roses, stars, pentagrams. Yet to initiates, these were seals of forbidden goddess worship, doors into Venus' esoteric secrets guarded with oaths of blood. The elites worship Venus precisely because her duality mirrored their ambitions. She was both inspiration and weapon, muse and trap. Take the Knights Templar as an example. While officially warriors of the cross, legends suggest their rituals blended Marian devotion with Venus occult history, turning the Virgin into a cipher for the forbidden dark goddess cult. The five-pointed star, echoing the Venus pentagram cycle, appeared in their architecture and seals. It wasn't chance. Secret societies. Venus encoded her hidden symbolism into the very stones of their temples, believing Venus initiation secrets could unlock power over both spirit and empire. The morning star, occult light, guided their pilgrimages, not only across deserts but through spiritual labyrinths. Alchemists followed suit, cloaking Venus occult rituals in cryptic texts. To them, copper, her sacred metal, was not merely material, but a living emblem of Venus star worship. They wrote of transformation, of beauty hiding corruption, of light hiding shadow. Every formula was more than chemistry. It was allegory for Venus goddess duality. Those who read carefully understood. The Venus astral cult thrived in alchemical labs, disguised as experiments but truly about forbidden Venus knowledge. To melt copper was to melt desire, to burn away illusions until only the dark goddess remained. The Freemasons later inherited these threads, embedding Venus hidden symbolism into their lodges. Their floors traced pentagrams, their rites mirrored celestial alignments, and their teachings hinted at Venus initiation secrets cloaked as moral lessons. The elite's occult rituals were refined here, no longer about overt blood sacrifice, but about energetic offerings, loyalty, secrecy, and obedience. The forbidden goddess worship was alive, but hidden behind allegories of light and stone. Venus occult worship never vanished. It simply adapted to survive in new languages and symbols. Even modern secret societies carry echoes of this cult. From occult orders of the 19th century to esoteric circles today, Venus occult history continues to inspire rituals involving roses, stars, and the morning star. The Venus Gnostic trap is clear. While they promise enlightenment, they also bind the seeker to the same cycles of desire and power. Forbidden Venus knowledge is never free. It comes with chains, and those who enter are often warned. Once you walk with the goddess, you cannot return unchanged. Consider how these patterns bleed into culture. Corporations use pentagrams in logos, governments inscribe stars into flags, and entertainment industries glamorize the archetype of the dark goddess cult. To the unaware, it's decoration. To the elites, worship Venus, it's continuity, a way of keeping the forbidden goddess worship alive in plain sight. The Venus astral cult thrives not in shadows alone, but in symbols millions of eyes see daily without ever recognizing their origin. That's the genius of Venus hidden symbolism. And yet, with every ritual and every symbol, there's a price. The elites know it, and ancient texts remind us, Venus never gives without taking. This takes us into the next veil of the story, where the cost of worship becomes undeniable. The price of blood, the binding of souls, and the sacrifices demanded by the goddess who shines brightest while hiding the darkest hunger. Every cult, no matter how cloaked in beauty, carries a cost, and Venus was no exception. The forbidden goddess worship that elites preserved demanded not only devotion, but sacrifice. Ancient myths describe altars stained with Venus blood sacrifice, where kings and commoners alike offered life itself to appease her dual nature. These Venus occult rituals were not superstition. They were exchanges of energy, binding worshippers to the dark goddess cult through irreversible vows. The elites worship Venus, knowing full well that once you gave, you were owned. Beauty, after all, was only the mask. Binding was the true essence. In Babylon, the cult of Inanna performed sacred rites that mixed fertility with death. Temple priestesses would reenact the descent of the goddess, while behind closed doors, offerings of blood sealed the Venus astral cult. The forbidden Venus knowledge promised fertility of land, victory in war, or ecstasy in love, but always demanded something in return. Secret societies Venus studied these practices, inheriting the principle that nothing is gained without sacrifice, and so their Venus occult history carried forward the price of binding, surrendering freedom for power, innocence for forbidden knowledge. Consider how this echoes in modern times. We may not see bodies on altars, but energy offerings persist, obsessions, addictions, even the manipulation of collective desire. The elite's occult rituals have adapted, shifting from physical blood to psychological fuel. The Venus Gnostic trap feeds on attention, lust, and devotion, draining people without them even realizing. Every hour spent worshipping false idols of beauty, power, or fame becomes an energetic offering to Venus' hidden symbolism. This is how the dark goddess cult thrives today, bloodless yet just as binding. Even myths of Aphrodite hinted at this cost. Wars sparked in her name, men and empires destroyed by desire. That is Venus goddess duality in action. Love that seduces while destruction waits in the shadows. To those in secret societies, Venus, these stories were never fairy tales. They were warnings and blueprints. The forbidden Venus knowledge they preserved was clear. If you call upon her, you must pay. And payment often meant chains, chains of desire, chains of power, chains that bind the soul as tightly as iron. Personal experience shows us the same principle in simpler form. Think of someone consumed by obsession, whether for wealth, a person, or an ideal. At first it feels like empowerment, but soon it devours peace of mind, health, and freedom. That's Venus occult meaning at work in daily life. It is the same archetype, beauty promising joy, while secretly tightening the knot. Forbidden goddess worship is less about temples and more about cycles, cycles that bind the heart and mind until escape feels impossible. The elites worship Venus precisely because they learn to harness this dynamic. They offer what they choose, blood, loyalty, or energy, and in return, they believe they receive power, influence, and forbidden Venus knowledge. But even for them, the chains remain. The Venus initiation secrets promise illumination, yet often lead to dependence. In that sense, the dark goddess cult does not simply enslave the weak. It binds everyone who touches her flame, no matter how powerful they think they are. And this, inevitably, leads to the most unsettling question of all. If Venus demands sacrifice and binds souls, could it be because she is not only a symbol, but an active force, an astral entity feeding on humanity? This takes us deeper into the mystery, into the next revelation, the possibility that behind the goddess, beyond the rituals, there lies a living intelligence shaping wars, dreams, and desires in ways most cannot even imagine. What if Venus was never just a star, nor merely a myth, but a presence, an intelligence watching from beyond the veil? The ancients hinted at this when they described Inanna descending into the underworld and returning transformed. That descent was not just symbolic, it pointed to the existence of an astral entity feeding on human energy. The forbidden goddess worship was never about statues or temples, but about contact with this being. The elites worship Venus because they believe she is alive, a force that responds, demands, and manipulates. The Venus occult meaning grows darker when you see her as more than metaphor, when you see her as hunger itself. Texts across civilizations echo this suspicion. Ishtar whispering to kings in dreams, Aphrodite stirring wars through desire, Astarte demanding Venus blood sacrifice. These are not merely stories, but signs of Venus astral cult activity. The Venus black goddess operates as an intelligence, weaving herself into human decisions, igniting lust, ambition, or rage when it serves her design. The elite's occult rituals, from Babylonian altars to modern secret societies' Venus, are nothing more than attempts to negotiate with this unseen power. Forbidden Venus knowledge is not theory. It is a dangerous dialogue with something that listens. Think of how dreams sometimes feel more real than waking life. Ancient priests believed such dreams were not random, but crafted by entities like the Venus astral cult. To them, sleep was not rest but a battlefield where the goddess bent the mind to her will. Even today, people speak of strange visions tied to the morning star occult light, sudden obsessions or desires that feel alien. Could these be whispers of the Venus hidden symbolism working through us? The Venus Gnostic trap suggests exactly that. The goddess binds through the invisible strings of thought and longing. Examples of this entity's influence can be seen in collective movements. Entire empires have risen and fallen under waves of desire, conquest, and blood, currents suspiciously aligned with Venus pentagram cycle appearances. Elites worship Venus because they see these patterns not as coincidences, but as interventions. They interpret Venus star geometry as a map of when her influence peaks, structuring wars, treaties, and rituals around her alignments. This is why Venus occult history blends astronomy with theology. The entity and the star are inseparable in their eyes. Consider modern parallels. How often does society glorify beauty, fame, and lust, elevating them into idols that consume entire lives? This obsession may not be cultural accident, but subtle manipulation, a modern form of Venus occult worship. The Venus astral cult doesn't need temples anymore. It has mass media, celebrity culture, and global desire to harvest. What once required blood sacrifice now thrives on attention, obsession, and psychic energy. The elite's occult rituals only amplify this current bina, making them conduits of the same ancient force. This raises a chilling possibility. If Venus is an astral intelligence, she may not serve humanity at all. The Venus-goddess duality suggests she offers gifts, but her price is enslavement. She is both liberator and jailer, whispering promises of power while binding souls to endless cycles. This Venus-hidden symbolism runs through myths, texts, and even modern entertainment, feeding an entity that hides behind beauty while consuming devotion. That is why forbidden Venus knowledge has always been dangerous. It does not just reveal, it entangles. And so, the enigma deepens. If Venus is indeed an entity, then perhaps her worship was never about honoring love or war, but about binding humanity itself, which leads to the next revelation. Maybe Venus is not a goddess of freedom at all, but a mask, a prison crafted from light and desire, holding souls captive in a golden illusion. What if the goddess humanity has adored for millennia was not a liberator, but a warden? The Gnostics warned of this. What appears radiant may actually be a trap. The Venus Gnostic trap suggests her beauty is the golden cage, keeping souls fascinated while secretly enslaved. The elites worship Venus not because she offers freedom, but because she teaches how to rule through illusion. Venus occult meaning, then, becomes darker still. Love as a chain, desire as a prison, devotion as control. The forbidden goddess worship was always less about worship itself and more about confinement disguised as adoration. In Gnostic texts, the archons are said to weave false lights to ensnare the soul. Venus' hidden symbolism fits this perfectly. The morning star, occult brilliance, promises transcendence. But what if it's a veil, a cosmic bait, to keep humanity revolving in cycles of reincarnation and suffering? The Venus astral cult operates as a prison ward, ensuring souls remain bound to craving, never breaking free. Elites' occult rituals exploited this, learning how to replicate the Venus Gnostic trap at societal levels, through politics, culture, even commerce. That's why the forbidden Venus knowledge was kept from the masses. Consider how obsession blinds us. People fall in love with beauty, wealth, or fame, only to find themselves enslaved by what they desired most. This microcosm reflects the Venus occult worship dynamic. The thing you chase becomes the chain that binds you. The elites worship Venus because they understand this psychology. They've weaponized Venus goddess duality, offering symbols of love and progress while quietly enforcing submission. The Venus dark side doesn't need chains of iron. It binds with silk, velvet, and golden stars. The Venus pentagram cycle itself becomes a symbol of this prison. Perfect, repeating, infinite, yet never escaping its orbit. Secret societies Venus saw in this geometry, a cosmic reminder, beauty repeating endlessly, yet never transcending. The forbidden goddess worship mirrored this through ritual cycles, binding initiates to repetition, never completion. Venus occult history shows how the same geometry was embedded into temples and cities, ensuring the Venus astral cult ruled not only heaven but earth. And most never realized they were inside her pattern. Personal reflection brings this home. How many times do people repeat the same mistakes, drawn again to the same temptations, even when they know the cost? That's Venus occult meaning at work in the human psyche. It's the Venus Gnostic trap expressed in daily life. Repetition disguised as choice. Forbidden Venus knowledge warns that breaking free requires awareness, seeing the prison for what it is, not what it pretends to be. Yet most remain enchanted. Staring at the morning star without realizing it blinds more than it guides. The elite's occult rituals, then, are not just worship, they are management of the prison. By aligning with Venus' hidden symbolism, they position themselves as wardens beside her, benefiting from the energy she harvests. This is why forbidden goddess worship has never been eradicated, only disguised. It sustains power structures by keeping humanity caught in cycles of desire, submission, and rebirth. The Venus Black Goddess does not simply tempt, she governs, feeding on the endless turning of the wheel. But here lies the most dangerous thought. If Venus is truly a prison, then the act of understanding her may be the first key to escape, which brings us to the final veil, the reflection that perhaps elites do not honor her beauty, but her danger. And in that danger lies the initiatory threshold, the final step into knowing why the dark goddess cult has survived for so long. Perhaps the greatest deception of all is believing Venus was ever just about beauty. The elites worship Venus not because she is gentle, but because she is dangerous. Her allure hides the Venus occult meaning, light as bait, shadow as truth. The forbidden goddess worship always hinted at this. To approach her was to step across a threshold, to confront Venus goddess duality in its purest form. She is the rose and the thorn, the star and the abyss, the promise and the betrayal. To look upon her with innocent eyes is to be seduced. To look with awakened eyes is to see the trap. The morning star occult brilliance shines brightest when the night is darkest. And isn't that symbolic? Just before dawn, she promises new beginnings, yet behind that promise hides the Venus Gnostic trap, cycles repeating, binding souls to endless desire. Secret societies, Venus taught that initiation meant facing this paradox directly, seeing beauty yet not being deceived by it, holding power yet not being consumed by it. The forbidden Venus knowledge becomes less about worship and more about survival, learning to dance with fire without burning. Think of personal challenges. Every time someone faces temptation, whether lust, ambition, or greed, they stand before the same Venus astral cult that once demanded blood. To resist or to submit becomes the test. The elite's occult rituals reframed this as training. If one could master the Venus dark side, one could control others who remained enslaved by it. The Venus initiation secrets were about more than rituals. They were about becoming aware of the prison and choosing whether to rule it or escape it. The symbolism is everywhere. The pentagram, the rose, the morning star, all of them, Venus hidden symbolism acting as mirrors. What you see depends on who you are. To the uninitiated, they are pretty shapes. To the initiate, they are warnings of the Venus black goddess demanding balance of blood and light. Forbidden Venus knowledge insists that symbols are alive. They test, they bind, they initiate. And in facing them, one begins to face oneself. Here lies the paradox. Elites worship Venus not only for her gifts, but for her trials. She does not hand out wisdom freely. She forces the seeker to sacrifice, to endure, to see the mask of beauty and not be blinded. The Venus occult history is less about ceremonies and more about transformation. Those who survive her tests gain clarity. Those who fail become offerings in the Venus astral cult. It is a razor's edge, where the slightest slip means bondage, but balance brings illumination. Even today, this reflection applies. Think of how people grow through hardship, through loss, through facing their own shadows. Venus' dark side plays out in life itself. Pain initiates, desire refines, sacrifice transforms. That is why forbidden goddess worship never dies. It is not confined to temples, but etched into human existence. The elites understood this, and so they honored Venus not merely as a goddess, but as the gateway to transformation, for better or worse. And so the enigma comes full circle. The goddess worshipped in secret, feared in myth, adored in art, was never just about love. She was about danger. To understand Venus is to stand at a threshold, staring at both beauty and abyss. And once you cross that threshold, you realize the story was never about her alone. It was about the soul's willingness to risk everything for forbidden knowledge. And this initiatory reflection is not an ending, but the opening of another path, waiting for those who dare to follow. Now that you've seen the forbidden face of Venus, the question is no longer what the elites worship, but what you will do with this knowledge. Will you keep walking under her light, unaware of the Venus Gnostic trap shaping your desires? Or will you dare to break the chains of illusion and see the dark goddess cult for what it truly is? Knowledge without action is just another form of slavery, and that's exactly what the elites want. Look around. The symbols of Venus hidden symbolism surround you, in logos, in architecture, in culture. Every day you participate unconsciously in Venus occult rituals without even realizing it. But once you've recognized the pattern, you have the power to choose. And choice is the first step toward freedom. So I ask you, will you remain blind, or will you take the path of awareness, even if it costs comfort? The forbidden Venus knowledge we explored isn't just history. It's a mirror reflecting your own life. Think of the desires that bind you, the obsessions that consume you, the illusions that keep you repeating cycles. Those are your personal altars of Venus. What will you sacrifice on them? And more importantly, when will you decide to stop offering your soul to illusions that were never yours to begin with? I want to hear from you. Do you see Venus as a liberator or as a warden of the soul? Do you believe the elites worship Venus out of fear, devotion, or control? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and they shape the next revelations we'll uncover together. And if this journey stirred something inside you, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and keep walking with me through the shadows of hidden knowledge. Because the story of Venus is just one key. The vault of forbidden mysteries holds countless others, and together we'll unlock them.